So hi friends, today we are up to a international relation current affairs series where we'll be targeting the most for productive thing that we can achieve in prelims. So here today in this topic we'll be talking about G7, G20 and G77 and to follow this series you may subscribe to this channel UPSC Geography Optional and for further updates please subscribe. So let's begin the series now. So first, group of 7. First we'll have a general overall reading, then what are the important points for the prelims we will check. So group of 7, it is an intergovernmental forum. Members, it is Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, UK, United States. EU is a non-enumerated member, represents 50% of the global net wealth, 32 to 46% of the global GDP, 10% of the world population. Originated in 1973, focuses on trade, security, economics, climate change. No treaty, permanent secretariat or office. Presidency rotates annually. Russia was part of G8 from 1997 to 2014 and 49th summit held in Hiroshima, Japan. So before seeing the important points in G7, I would like to recommend you a number 73, 99, 64. These three are an important number that we will discuss what is its importance at the end. Okay. So first in this, what is the important point for the prelims is they may ask the G7 members. They may give you an option some countries and they will ask whether they are part of G7 or not. So here, so how to remember in a practical way G7? It's very simple. First, you have to know that Canada, Germany and Italy, these are a member of G7. You just keep it in your mind with some logic. Okay, what logic I followed is, see, UK and US are there. UK is closest France, US closest Canada. So this, by this way I remember 4 members of G7 easily: UK, France, US, Canada. Now in between we have Germany, Italy and Japan. Okay, Germany, Italy and Japan, we have to remember this is one way. Other way which I used to prefer is France and Japan. If we see an exam we will get confused whether it is part of G7 or not. Mostly France also we can have a guess, but Japan, a most important confusion will come in prelims. So first, whenever you are reading G7, you first read France is a member, Japan is a member. Then go for Canada, Germany, Italy. Okay. Then UK, US, obviously you will know. So somehow you find the logic. My logic how I used to is UK for France, US, Canada 4 members. Remaining 3 members are G, I, J. Or there is some movie called as G.I. Joe. If you remember that G for Germany, I for Italy, J for Japan. So one question you will be able to solve. If one statement, I am saying one statement in that prelims regarding G7, you will have an idea with this. Let's go ahead. Next important point here is 50% of the global net wealth is from G7 countries. And if you see the total population of G7, it is just 10%. And it contributes 32 to 46% of the global GDP. So here an important point is 10% of world population contributing or having 50% of the global net wealth, which means it shows the importance of G7, why it is relevant today, and it's about rich peoples. Next important point that you have to remember, it originated in 1973. Basically just a basic information to remember. And next in this point we have to remember climate change. See, G7, it should be obviously about trade, security, economics, it's fine, but climate change, whether G7 is talking about climate change or not, in exam we may get confused in this. So climate change is a thing that has been talked in groups of 7, so we have to remember that. And further, G7, they do not have any treaty or a permanent secretariat or office as such. Okay, Russia was part of G8. G8 from 1997 to 2014, it was G8. Okay, because Russia was part. Russia after 2014, Russia is not a part of G8, so they removed one member. So G7, it's working as G7. And very very important point for this 2024 prelims is the 49th summit of the G7. It happened in Hiroshima, Japan. Right. So first magic number that I have told you, 73. This is regarding the G7 originated. It originated in 1973. Fine. Shall we go to the next? Okay. Let's go for the G20. So again, our strategy is that we will read the statements here together. Then we'll go to the summarize, or we'll say which is an important point. So let's read G20. G20, it formed in 1999, raised to summit level in 2008. That is, the summit level meeting started from 2008. There are 19 member countries. Presidency rotates annually, similar to G7. India hosted 18 summit with the theme One Earth, One Family, One Future, which is Vasudeva Kutumbakam. Then Delhi Declaration aims to triple global renewable energy capacity by 2030. Full timely implementation of the Black Sea Grain. Troika working association between current, past, and the next presidency. African Union, continental body of 55 member states in Africa, promotes unity, stability, and human rights. Headquarters Addis Ababa in Ethiopia. Remember, this is, we're talking about African Union, and it has headquarters in Addis Ababa in Ethiopia. As the G20 do not have any headquarters. We are talking about African Union. I will explain you further why African Union we are talking in G20. Okay, let's move ahead. What are the other initiatives in G20? G20 Global Partnership for Financial Inclusion lauds India's digital public infrastructure. Sustainable Finance Working Group SFWG aims for greener, more resilient economies. G20 generic framework for mapping global value chains for cost optimization. G20 pandemic fund launched in 2022 aims to tackle global pandemics. India receives grant for animal health system strengthening. Okay, next we have Business 20 B20 Summit, established in 2010 as official G20 dialogue forum with global business community, brings policymakers, business leaders, and experts together. Theme of the recent summit is RACE, RAISE, which is Responsible, Accelerated, Innovative, Sustainable, Equitable Businesses. Then Global SDG Acceleration Fund. It was created for financing global public goods and bridging the SDG financing gap. GSAF proposed a global multi-donor fund with contribution from G20 countries and next 10 largest countries by GDP. Okay, so these are the things that we have to see in G20. Okay, so this is general. If you are reading for first time, you should remember all this. But for prelims point of view, in prelims, what are the statements that can be formed to confuse you? So this is the main motive of the series. So let's start. So in G20, what is the important point? When it was formed, 1999, basic level thing. Summit level from 2008 it started. See, basically it consists of 19 countries plus European Union, plus it also consists of African Union. This African Union was recently or formally introduced or inducted inside this G20. This is the thing that we have to remember. That is why I have given about African Union and its headquarters below. Let's continue. So India hosted the 18th summit, very important. G7 last summit hosted by Japan. G20 last summit, 18th summit hosted by India. What was the theme? One Earth, One Family, One Future, Vasudeva Kutumbakam. Right, that is important. Then there is a declaration that was done in this meeting. Usually any meeting happens, they used to have some declaration. So in this Delhi declaration, the main aim is to is about they're talking about what. So this can be a potential question for this year. So they basically talked about renewable energy, What in renewable energy, if you see, it's about tripling the global renewable energy capacity by 2030. That is whatever the renewable energy that we are using now, three times we used to progress. We have to progress in that. This is the Delhi Declaration. Keep it in your mind. This can be a potential question. Also, black sea grain implementation, full-time implementation of it. They have talked about it. It is also very important for this prelims. It's regarding that Russia, Ukraine supply of the sea grains via the Black Sea. So that is about this Delhi Declaration. This can be from G20. They can ask. Then Troika. If you have read about G20 in your current affairs magazines, you have come about this term Troika. Troika is basically the current member, the past member, and the next presidency member who are going to be there in the G20. They are as a similar subset inside the G20 as Troika. They are called as Troika. Next, African Union. If you see here, it's a continental body of 55 member states in Africa. It's promoting unity, stability, human rights. That is not important. It's 55 member states. That can be an important question. And where is the headquarters of this African Union? It is in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. So if you see this Addis Ababa in Ethiopia, where it is, just if you want to see a visual representation, if you draw this Africa like this, right? Somewhere here we can find this Ethiopia, and in Ethiopia this is almost in the center. If you see center of this diagram, if you see, this is Addis Ababa in Ethiopia. This is where the headquarters of the African Union is there. Okay, this is basic G20. Very important thing that they can ask. Now, what are the other initiatives that were there in G20? If you see, first we should talk about financial inclusion. Okay, global partnership for financial inclusion. In this, they lauded India's digital public infrastructure. We are having a good infrastructure. The discussions on that happened in financial inclusion. Then second, they talked about sustainable finance. Okay, so it's basically about greener and more resilient kind of economies. In this, they talked about. So they can frame a question in this like match the following: global partnership for financial inclusion dash dash dash. For greener resilient economies, no. For digital public infrastructure, yes. Similarly, sustainable finance working group, yes. CFWG. For digital public infrastructure, no. For greener more resilient economies, yes. Similarly, we have a G20 generic framework for mapping the global value chains. What we do here, it's about cost optimization, how to reduce the cost plus also optimize the cost plus give a good service out of it in the value chains. Then we have a G20 pandemic fund launched in 2022. So here we talked about the global pandemics, and recently India received grant for animal health system strengthening. It's very important. So from this session we can expect a question of match the following, like global partnership financial inclusion for what digital public infrastructure, sustainable finance working group forward greener and resilient economies, generic framework for global value chains for cost optimization, pandemic fund for global pandemics, India received animal health system strengthening. So in exam, if we see pandemic fund animal health system strengthening, we tend to guess that how pandemic is related to animals, so we tend to mark it wrong. But these are an important point we have to know. If we know, then only we can attend this question, right? Next, in G20 there is something called as Business B20 Summit within this G20. It started in 2010, right? It is actually a dialogue forum for the global business community, and its recent theme is RACE, which is responsible, accelerated, innovative, sustainable, equitable business. Responsible, accelerated, sustainable, equitable business. Okay, how to remember this? This is very important. B20, they may ask to confuse you, right? So actually, how to remember this? First, R for responsible you have to remember. Then for acceleration, you may use this diagram, acceleration. Then for innovation, the bulb, it's an innovation, right? So for innovation you could remember bulb, and through SDG we can remember sustainable development. This is for equity. And basically if we see here this acceleration and sustainable, what happens is that they two have been combined, and they have led to the formation of a fund, GSAF fund. This GSAF fund is Global Sustainable Development Goal Acceleration Fund. What is the use of this fund? It's actually like the G20 countries plus 10 next largest countries by GDP, they are going to contribute for this fund. For what? Sustainable Development Acceleration Fund. Okay, I have given this also here. It's Acceleration Fund, GSAF, and its use from G20 countries and the next 10 largest countries by GDP. So this is all about G20. Now let's get into G77. As usual, our thing is like we will read it first, then we'll mark which is important. Group of 77, established in 1964, largest intergovernmental organization of developing countries in United Nations, aims to promote collective economic interest and enhance joint negotiating capacity, comprises 134 developing nations. India's first nation to preside over G77 in New York. China, while closely working with the group, not officially a full member, G77 plus China. So what it is there inside is, what is important is, first it established in 1964. The magic number that I have given you first hand, right? What is it? 73, 99, 64. 73 establishment of G7, 99 establishment of G20, 64 establishment of G77. Okay. So what is G77? It is actually a largest intergovernmental organization for the voice of developing countries, okay, in the United Nations. Okay, basically they talk about collective economic interest, and they also talk about joint negotiating capacities. So basically 134 developing nations are part of it. So India is the first nation to preside over the G77, which held in New York. And very important statement, they may ask if China is a member of group of 77. No, China is not a member of G77. So China is not officially a full-time member of G77, but it works closely with the G77. So thank you friends, we'll see in the next video in this international series. Please do subscribe to this channel for more contents like this. Your subscription will be a good boost for us to do more such videos. Thank you.